Okay, it's just about 11:30. I think we're like less than a minute away, so I'm gonna go ahead and just start. Okay, just about everybody should have gotten, well, I think everyone should have gotten their midterm 2 scores, and just about everybody should have gotten their comments and for their first draft and instructions for the final draft for the term paper. Okay, if you have not received that, please let me know. Okay. And the final draft of the paper is going to be due on December 11th, and also that day is going to be the day of the final. Okay, so December 11th is when the final draft of the essay will be due, and December 11th is also the day of the final exam. Okay, any questions or comments or concerns about that?
Yes, Professor. Hi, this is Leah Hemphill. I have a question regarding the final draft. So you put the prompt for the final draft into the email?
Yeah, that's right.
Let me look at it because I don't think I saw that. I saw the email from you and I saw the score and the comments.
Okay, all right. You and I, we could talk about that after the meeting if.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So let me go ahead and show you the syllabus. Okay, I've made some changes to the syllabus. So let me see. Okay, so there's going to be, let me see here. The last two topics are going to be on Nagel. The first is going to be on the absurd. And this has to do with the meaning of life. So I made some slight changes here towards the end of the syllabus and the topics that we're going to be covering. So we'll be talking Nagel and the absurd, and of course this has to do with the meaning of life, whether human existence has a meaning. And then next week we're going to talk about Nagel and death, right? So what death is and what we should think about death. Okay, so the death is the end of our lives, and death is also the end of the semester. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about next week, right? So that's that. And then, as I said, the paper is going to be due at on the 11th, and the final exam will also be on the 11th, and the final exam will consist of all of the materials that we've covered throughout the semester. Okay, so you will need to know the contents of all of these topics here. Okay, and of course it's going to obviously be open book, open note, open lecture, open everything. So when you see the final exam, you will have access to all of the information that you need, okay, including your books. Okay, so let me go ahead and talk about what we have planned for today, which is on Nagel and his paper, The Absurd. Okay, so this has to do with the meaning of life. And I hope all of you have some opinions and some thoughts on this topic. Okay, the question is whether human existence has a meaning or purpose. I mean, when I talk about meaning and purpose, we talked about in your paper, you wrote about complexity, right? So the idea is there are certain things, certain objects that we encounter that no doubt have complexity, right? So for instance, a watch, right? No doubt has complexity. And what does that mean? They've got to be clear on what it means for something to be complex. I think some of you had a good grasp on what complexity is, but maybe some of us didn't have a very strong grasp on what's complex. Okay, so what is meant by something having complexity? What's it mean for my watch or the clock on the wall or my computer or my phone to be complex, right? It just means that these objects, okay, so just take my phone for instance, right? So I say that it's complex, and what I mean by that is that it's got parts, it's made up of parts, it's made up of interconnected parts. So it's composed of parts, and the parts are interconnected and or arranged in a certain fashion that allows the phone to perform a particular function. I mean, these smartphones obviously have many functions, but one of the main function of a phone is to be able to telecommunicate, right? Telecommunicate, using sound, right? That's what the telephone, right? So that's what it means for the phone to be complex. It's made up of parts. Parts are interconnected, and they're interconnected or arranged in a particular way that allows the phone to be used in a particular way. So it's got a purpose, it's got a function. Okay, so if you ask me what a phone is for, I will be able to tell you what it's for. If you ask me what this water bottle is for, I will be able to tell you what it's for. Okay, what its purpose or its function is. Right, the same for a clock, the same for my computer, and as it were, I could tell you, the purpose of my eyes, right? What the eyes are for, right? So that's the sense in which the eye is complex, right? It's got parts, made up of parts, right? I mean, you go to your optometrist or ophthalmologist, they would tell you the parts, all of the parts, all of the various parts that make up the human eye, right? The cornea, what do you call it, the pupils, the lens, the retina, and so on and so forth. All of these parts, and all of the parts are interconnected or arranged in such a way that allows the eye to perform a very clear function, right? It's got a function. All right, so that's what makes the eye complex. Okay, so I hope it's clear what I mean when I say that something has a purpose, a particular function, right? Something.
Not just about function.
Is
Like
it?
in biology, we describe an organism or like cellular activity as being simplistic if you have a couple.
Sorry, go ahead. You're fading out. Say that again.
Did I get kicked out? What
No,
happened?
I don't know. Yeah. Say it again. Yeah. You just kind of faded out for a little bit.
You have a couple different things doing one thing. Whereas when you have a complex organism, you have several different systems, each performing their own individual task collectively so that the whole can perform larger, more coordinated tasks.
Right. Good. That's good.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Even
No.
like you were looking for somebody to say something that inclined comprehension.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good. Very good. Okay. Very nicely stated. Right. That's what it is for a object to be complex. Right. It's made up of smaller parts, and the parts do their thing in such a way. Right. And there's some sort of coordination between those parts doing what they do in such a way that the greater complex object can perform a greater complex function or something like that. All right. Okay, good. Now then the question is, okay, so my eyes have a function or a purpose, my nose has a purpose, my mouth has a purpose, my ears and my hands and my knees and my everything else, right? All of these parts are complex, right? These structures that I have on my body, these are complex and have a clear function. What about me as a whole, as a human being, right? What about me as a person? Do I have as a whole, do I have a function, right? That's a question. Is there a purpose or a function to human life, to human existence? That's the question.
Well, if we were basing it off of stated functionality or obvious functionality, I would say to consume.
To consume? What do you mean? To consume?
Well, that's we consume. We
Consume?
take things into our bodies, we use
Ah,
them up, and then we relinquish waste.
yeah.
That's
I mean, that
an
is something
obvious
that we
function.
do. That's something that we, in fact, do, right? In order for us to sustain ourselves, I mean, we got to be able to consume certain things we find in the environment, right? Consume it and then find some way to sort of extract energy, nutrition from it, right? For our bodies to. But it's not so clear that that's the purpose. I mean, I guess maybe you could say that's the purpose, but it's not so clear that that's the purpose. That's something that we do, right, to survive.
Everything after that is just what's the word I'm looking for? Not conjecture. Insinuation.
Uh-huh.
There is no stated purpose other than the interpreted one that we elicit
Oh,
for ourselves.
oh, very good. That's very good. That's very nicely put. Yeah. So there's no sort of objective purpose, right? So, I mean, like my phone. I mean, we can use our phone for all kinds of things, right? I guess I could use my phone as a hammer if I wanted, right? But that's not what the phone is for, right? That's not what it was created for. That's not what it was designed for, right? I mean, you use your phone as a hammer, right? You're going to break your phone. Okay, that's not what it's for. Okay, a hammer is for hammering, a phone is not. So, I mean, we can state certain functions or we can use our phone for various things, right? But that's not what it's for. Whereas when it comes to a human being, I mean, we can decide what our lives are for, right? What my life is for, what I'm going to devote my life for, what my life is, what makes my life important and meaningful. Right? We can tell these stories to ourselves, but that's not the same as saying that our lives have, or my life has some objective, right? Purpose or function. Anyways, Leah, did you have a?
Yeah, like you said that the hand, eye, and nose all have purpose. Would they
Yeah.
still have purpose if they were not attached to a living organism? What would their purpose be? What would the purpose of the eye be if it wasn't on top of my head? Just the eye laying there, what would the purpose be of it?
Yeah, there wouldn't be any purpose, right? So,
Like what I'm getting at, what does have a purpose without something realizing it has a purpose? If I didn't realize it has a purpose, then it didn't have a purpose. That's like the tree falling down in the forest. Does it make a sound?
No, but the human, think about the eyes, right? Yeah, I mean, we do use the eyes to see, right? And you might think the eyes are for seeing just simply because we use it to see. But I think there's something even more, but that doesn't really quite capture sort of the reasons for saying that the eye has a particular function, right? Whether you decide to use your eyes for seeing or not, that's what your eyes are for. Okay, I mean, your eyes can do things that your nose and your mouth and ears simply cannot do, right? So it's just something objective, right? So something biologically, scientifically objective about saying that the human eyes are for seeing. I mean, you do something to your eyes, you damage it, right? You will not be able to see, right? Because you destroy the one thing on your body that was intended for, or the purpose of, was for seeing, right? So I think that's an objective fact, right, about the human eye, that it's for seeing.
Yeah, because if you cross the wires in your brain, you can smell with your eyes. Depends where you plug it in, right?
Wait, what?
Isn't it kind of like in biology, Kristen? Help me out. You are more biologist than I am. Isn't it kind of like if you cross the wires from your eye, if it goes through a different nerves, you can smell with your eyes?
You can smell with it. Hold on. Before Crystal gets in here, hold on. Before Crystal, you can get in, but just give me a second here. All right. Now, the ears, the nose definitely cannot see. I mean, it doesn't matter how you cross up the wires, the nerves to the brain. You are not going to be able to see through the nose because the nose doesn't have ability to absorb and to detect light, right? It doesn't have the retina. There's no way for light to get through to the nose. right?
Not technically see, but your brain can, what is it?
Misinterpret? Yeah.
No, didn't you, do you remember dendritic branching from neurology?
Mhm. It's
Like,
been a while since I did bioscience, so I'm like, okay, I'm not escaping. How was it exactly? I know how to study it, but I can't remember exactly how.
when you lose functionality from one sense organ,
Mhm.
the dendrites of those neurons can branch out into other parts of the brain
Mhm.
and connect to those parts of the brain in order to compensate for the missing sense organ.
Okay.
Actually, I talked about this earlier in the semester. Remember, I was talking about people seeing color, or not seeing color, seeing sound
Mhm.
or smelling sound.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Wait, is the professor still there?
Yeah,
Or,
I'm here.
okay. Yeah, what do they call that? Synesthesia.
Mhm.
I think that's what she's talking. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes. That's what I'm talking about. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, no, I understand. If you lose your sight, then maybe your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, certainly your sense of hearing is going to be enhanced, right? And it's because, yeah, I mean, as Crystal suggested, maybe something's happening in the brain that's, maybe things are getting rewired in the brain in such a way that, your sense of hearing
I
is
think it's called
enhanced.
compensatory branching or
Yeah.
over branching, something like that.
Yeah. But that's not the same as saying that the ears are seeing, right? Because I mean, like when it comes to, detecting certain things, things like shape and size and distance and these kinds of things. I mean, those
Well,
are
that's
things
what
that, of course, we
sonar.
can detect visually, but we can also detect it auditorily, right? I mean, that's what bats do, right? Bats are blind, but they can detect like their environment, the size of their environment, various things located in their environment and distances and things like that using like sound, echolocation and things, right? But that's not the same as seeing, right? I mean, maybe there's something visual that shows up on the brain, right? Using sound, maybe something visual, you get some sort of a visual representation, right? But that's not the same as seeing. Seeing requires light, right? And the light gets detected through the photo light receptors in the eye, right? The retina at the back of the eye. And so if light is not getting detected by the retina, well, light's not being detected. If light's not being detected, okay, you are not in any literal sense seeing, right? Doesn't matter what sort of compensation is happening in the brain, okay? You are not seeing.
I think if the philosopher argues that, let's say hand, eyes, nose have purpose because, they're built of all these parts, which makes it this complex thing is a purpose. The same way he could argue, say, look, human is built of all these small parts and it has to have a purpose, right? That's what he's going to argue. Or
Okay. Sorry. Say that last part again.
because human is a complex
Yeah.
being made up of smaller parts, which if let's say the eye has a purpose, so does the human being. They have to have a purpose as well.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that. I mean, there's when you say some object is complex, there's got to be two things that you're saying there's two things that an object has to have in order for us to say that it's complex, right? At least in the sense of complex, the way Paley's using it.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be composed of parts, and the parts have to be interconnected. And that's certainly something that is true of us as a whole, as human beings. We are composed of parts, and the parts are composed and arranged, interconnected in a certain kind of way. But in addition to that, there has to be a clear purpose to that thing, right? And when it comes to the eyes, the ears, and the nose, right, we can articulate in a very clear way what that purpose is. We can't, however, in a very clear way, right, in some objective way, state the purpose of a human being, right? I mean, if there is some very specific purpose that's so here's what I would say about all human noses. They're all for smelling. Here's what I would say about all human eyes. They're all for seeing, right? So that's something that's common to all eyes and all noses. Now, there's nothing like that we can say about all human beings. The purpose of a human being is, for Leah, for Crystalline, for me, right? There's this single thing that all of our lives are supposed to be about, right?
I think physical existentiality is a purpose in and of itself. Simply the act of experiencing, or the act of feeling, the act of consciousness
Yeah.
is a purpose in and of itself. Like, say the universe had a consciousness, how would it explore itself, all of its individual and distinct parts, all of its smaller parts?
Okay, good. All right. I think what the quote-unquote existentialist will say, the existentialist philosopher who denies that human beings have some objective purpose, right? What they will say is, look, indeed, human beings have existence, and existence involves, consuming and living and experiencing. We experience pain, we experience hunger, we experience friendship, we experience love, we experience all of these things, right? And we right, that's what existence involves, right? We experience all of these things, but that's all human existence is. It's just existence, right? Existence comes, okay, so here's a simple way to put it. For the existentialist, existence comes before purpose, okay? We exist first, right? So your mom and dad, how does your mom and dad bring you into existence, right? Do they have some sort of a plan, some sort of a design for you? And then according to that design, they bring you about? No, that's not usually the way human beings are brought about, right? Mom and dad have certain kinds of natural urges. They act on those urges, and then boom, right? 10 months later, there you are. You just come into existence, right?
Technically, that's the way all things come into existence.
No, but that's not the way my computer came into existence. It's not like some random occurrences brought about the computer, right? Before there was a computer, there was before there was a computer, people felt the need for something like a computer, right? So before Turing first proposed his ideas, right, that is the basis for the modern computer, right? Before Turing gave his original ideas for the modern computer, he realized we need something like a computer, right? So the idea came first, the purpose or the function came first, and then after realizing we need something like a computer, we need things like watches, we need something like an automobile, right? So you felt the need or the necessity for things like computers and phones and automobiles and things like this. And then after realizing we needed these things, we went about bringing them into existence. So purpose first and then existence.
But we are hardwired to procreate. We have the urge to procreate. It's hardwired in us to do that, just like any other animal.
Yeah.
Makes a good point.
No, yeah. So we have that. So we have these urges. We act on those urges, and then we bring other human beings into existence, right? So it's the urges that bring about the existence, and then once you come into existence, then you got to realize, then you got to think about, okay, then what's my purpose going to be, right? Oh, I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to save people's lives. I'm going to be a teacher and be an educator. I'm going to be an engineer.
Those aren't purpose. Okay? Those are things we do.
Okay, right. I mean, but people find a lot of meaning and a lot of fulfillment, or they might even say to themselves, that's my purpose in life, right? To be an educator, or to be, I don't know, whatever, a good father, or to be a doctor, or so on and so forth. But my point here is, when it comes to human existence, existence comes first, and then we got to figure out our purpose, right? Whereas these other kinds of things, like a phone and an automobile and a table and these things like that, there is purpose first, and then we bring them into existence, right? So that's the thing about human beings, right? We come into existence and then we got to try to figure out, well, what's our purpose going to be, right? And then everyone just winds up making up a purpose for themselves. There isn't any objective purpose to human existence, right? That's the thought. Our lives are different than, right, other things that exist, right, like a computer or an automobile or something.
Maybe the original purpose it's lost, because if you read like the old Sumerian texts, like the original text, before even Bible, they say what the purpose of us was, you know.
The
So,
purpose of our what?
of the purpose of human beings,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about it. You know, the how I don't know how 5,000-year-old texts, you know, they talk about it.
Yeah. They do talk about that, right?
So,
I
but
mean,
it's been lost, you know, and it's like, you know, been redone and all that stuff over all these years into different religions that, you know, we don't know. The purpose has been lost.
yeah, purpose been lost, but I mean, the question is was there ever a purpose in the, was there ever a, like an objective, original purpose in the first place?
According
right?
to the old Sumerians, yes, they created us. We were created to work.
We're great. I mean, we do work and we
We
need to
were
work to
created as the
keep
workers.
ourselves into, to remain in existence. We have to work, but it's not so clear that that's what the purpose is. Okay, so let me see here. You're talking about these 5,000 years. I don't know if there are texts that are 5,000 years old.
Of the
Actually,
Sumerian.
biblical texts are not anywhere near 5,000 years
Yeah,
old.
right.
The
No,
oldest
no,
text in the
no.
Bible is about 3,200 years old.
Yeah.
Let me talk. The Sumerian. Look up Sumerian texts.
No, I know, but cuneiform itself is only about 4,000 years old, and that's
I
the
don't-
oldest written language in the human lexicon.
Okay,
Don't-
but yeah,
don't
we don't
quote
need to get into that discussion. Okay, so I mean, my only point is, yeah. Well, hold on. What are the Westminster? Oh, do you guys know about the Westminster Catechisms? The Westminster Shorter Catechisms, right?
What?
Let's see. What is the chief end or the chief purpose or the ultimate purpose of man? Right. So,
According to who?
according to the Catholics, right?
Oh,
Man's, why does this keep erasing here? Why does it keep erasing? What is the chief end or the chief purpose or the ultimate purpose of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and to enjoy Him.
yeah, that's what it was. I was gonna say worship or something like that.
Yeah, or something like that, right? But I mean, for many of us who don't really believe this stuff, it just kind of seems made up, right? It just seems sort of made up. I mean, there is okay.
Well,
here's the
I'd
thing.
like to. I would like to point out that all knowledge is emergent, and just because we don't yet have a grasp of what the universal purpose may be, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're anywhere near understanding what it could possibly be.
Whereas, I mean, you know, there are other things where it's not so mysterious and it's not so hard to figure out. If you ask me what the purpose of my computer is, right? I mean, that's not such a hard question, right? It's
In
obvious.
terms of living organisms, though, some might say that a computer is a simple design.
Okay, but I mean, it's got parts, and the parts are interconnected in such a way that the computer can perform certain tasks, right? I mean, look at my glasses here, right? What's the purpose of my glasses? Oh, this is like a mysterious question, and who can know such mysteries? No, there isn't any mystery there, right? I mean, it's obvious what the purpose of my glasses is, right? And so if something has a purpose, it shouldn't be that hard to figure out what it is, right? I mean, maybe human life is different. Maybe it has a purpose and it's so hard to figure out what it is. Here's something we can agree on, right? Here's something that we can agree on. No one can seem to, there's no universal agreement on what the purpose of a human being is, right?
That is something we can agree on.
Yeah, so there isn't any universal agreement on the purpose of human existence. And so
I like that word,
perhaps,
agreement.
so perhaps the reason why there isn't universal agreement on what the purpose of human existence is is that there isn't one. Maybe that's the reason. Okay, so I mean, that's not a crazy idea, right? So when it comes to human existence, it's existence first, and then after we are sort of thrown into existence, right? So I think Leia didn't choose to come into existence, right? This is not sort of any sort of grand plan on her part, right? She's just sort of thrown into existence, right? And you realize you exist, and then I mean, how long is she going to exist? Like 80, 90 years? You got to figure out what your life's going to be about, right? You got to make up something for yourself that's meaningful and purposeful and important for your life, right? You want to try to make something of your life. You want your life to mean something, and whatever's meaningful to her, whatever's meaningful to me, whatever's meaningful to Crystalline, I mean, it could all be, it could all be very different. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Nagel here. Nagel's central thesis is that life is indeed absurd. Okay, there's something absurd about human existence, right? Now, what does he exactly mean by absurd? I mean, that's what we're going to try to get at. One of the premise of his claim, one of the premise for the argument that life is absurd is that life is meaningless. Okay, there's no purpose to human life, human existence. We just exist. Okay, so that's an important part of the argument that life is absurd. Okay, which is what he ultimately wants to argue. One argument that life is absurd is that nothing we do matters. Okay, so nothing we do will matter in a minute. Okay, so sorry, back up here.
Hey Google.
Yeah.
Turn off the light.
So you gotta turn the volume off when you're talking to your Google. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Okay. So what was I saying? All right. So one premise that life is absurd is that life is meaningless. And why should we think that life is meaningless or purposeless or there's no point to human existence? Well, one argument is that nothing we do will matter a million years from now. What's going to happen a million years from now? Well, we will all have gone extinct, right? And it's not so clear that there's going to be, well, I mean, I would imagine there's going to be some kind of life here on Earth, right? But it's extremely doubtful that any of the animal life currently on Earth will continue to exist a million years from now, right? I think I've heard scientists, I think before Stephen Hawking died, I think he predicted that the human species will go extinct within the next 500 years. Okay?
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah. I mean, 500 years, I mean, that's an extremely short time. I mean, if you're thinking in terms of like the evolutionary, on the evolutionary timeline, right? 500 years is extremely short. So if you think about the existence of human beings on a 24-hour timeline, the thought here is that maybe for us, and midnight is extinction, maybe we are at like 11:58 or 11:59 p.m., right? We are sort of right at the edge of our time here on Earth, right? So very, very close to extinction. So certainly, if we're talking about 500 years, right, a million years from now, I mean, we will have long gone out of existence. And so whatever we do now will not matter in a million years, okay? So all the things that we think are really, really important, right? My career, the grade I get in this class, my relationships, right? My health, my home, my finances, so on and so forth, things that we all stress about and worry about. And, does that boy, is he going to call me? Is she interested in me? Do my friend, you know, you spend some time, you get older like me, and how many friends do I really have, right? And these are things that we think about and we think are really, really important. A million years from now, when human life has had gone out of existence for a million years, you will realize that a million years from now, none of what we worry about now will have mattered, right? It certainly will not matter then. And if it doesn't matter then, well, perhaps it doesn't matter now, right? I mean, one thing you can say is whether you're rich or poor, educated or uneducated, right? You have a lot of friends or you have no friends. It all sort of ends the same for us, right? The rich man and the poor man, I mean, what's going to happen? We're all going to get old, we get sick, and then we're going to die, right? And then we're going to go out of existence. And I mean, thinking about our grandparents or our great-grandparents, think about their lives and what they did and whatever they did, right? Whatever careers or relationships or finances that they had, none of that matters now, right? And none of what they did matters now, then maybe none of what they did then really mattered. Okay, so perhaps that's a reason to think that human life has no meaning or purpose. Nothing we do matters. Okay? Right, so that's one thought. What about the fact that we are all going to die? Maybe that's a reason for thinking that nothing we do is of any lasting significance, right? Right? No matter how big a house you have, and no matter how much wealth and goods that you have acquired, when you die, you're not taking any of that with you. And so whatever we do, whatever we achieve, whatever we attain, it's all temporary and it's all fleeting, right? So if your job and your relationships are important, it's only important for a short period of time, right? If any of it has any kind of meaning, the meaning lasts for a very, very short period of time. It's all transient and temporary, right? And so perhaps ultimately, at the end of the day, right, it's all pointless. Okay, so all the stuff that we worry about, that we think are very, very, very important. Okay, I think Crystal was saying, I think Leah was saying it too. Many, many things that we think are really, really important, those things are important because we tell ourselves they're important, right? Maybe those things are meaningful, but only because we tell ourselves that those things are meaningful, okay? From an objective standpoint, right? Many of the things that we worry about, we spend so much of our time and money and energy investing in. Ultimately, it doesn't make. Ultimately, it's not going to make one bit of difference. Okay. I mean, I would say to you, my son, who's a 14-year-old, right? He loves basketball, and he's hoping to get a college scholarship playing basketball. So he practices almost every single day. He practices. He goes out and practices like every single day, and well, not every day, maybe like 4 days a week he practices, right? And even in the winter time, right? I mean, we don't have, because of the pandemic, we don't have access to an indoor gym. So he's out there in the cold practicing, right? Like 4 or 5 days a week. And we pay a coach to come once a week, right? So like a basketball tutor, right? Once a week to coach him, right? To train him, right? And so all of that time and all of that and all the sweat and the tears, and he's at home like doing push-ups every day and this and that because he's got a dream. So to him, it's extremely important, right? So one way to make this kid happy is to tell him, oh, wow, you're really good, right? If you tell him he's good at basketball, oh, he will have a grin from like east to west, right? I mean, you will make his day, right? So if you compliment about his basketball skills, that will like lift him up. That will make his day. If you tell him he's not very good, right? I mean, you will crush him. You crush his soul. I don't know, the coach tells him that he's playing bad or that whatever. So this story that he has in his mind, right? That basketball is this really, really important thing in his life. But ultimately, when you step back, what is he doing when he plays basketball? He's taking a stupid ball and he's putting it in a stupid hoop. And whether he puts the ball in the hoop, right? Whether he's very good at putting a ball in a hoop or he's not good at it, who cares? I mean, what real bit of difference does that make in anyone's life, right? How could that have any kind of lasting meaning or purpose? Or how could it really make any real difference, right? Ultimately, it doesn't make one bit of difference, okay? This is just a story that he tells himself. It's really, really important. But the rest of us, when we see him, we think, okay, good for him, right? That's really important for him and he's working very hard towards his goals. But ultimately, I mean, what difference does it make, right? He's very good at putting a ball in a hoop. He's not very good. What difference does it make, right? And we can tell similar stories, right? We all get worked up about, what grades we get in class and whether we're really good at writing a paper or not very good at writing a paper or very good at taking, a test in biology or not, right? Whether we get a good job, we get a high-paying job or don't pay high-paying, whether we can afford to buy a house or can't afford to buy a house, right? These are all things we tell ourselves. Very, very, very important, okay? Is it very, very important that we're in a good marriage, right? That we have somebody in our life that we can have a relationship with? Well, I mean, some people, they tell themselves that's like the most important thing, but maybe that's just a story we tell ourselves, okay? And so ultimately, whether you're good or bad playing sports, you're good at bad academically, you're good at bad in relationships, you're good or bad with finances, whether you live in a big house or a small house, right? It all sort of ends the same.
We all become very nihilistic very quickly.
Yeah, this is what what's his name Nagel is suggesting here.
Okay. What philosophy is this exactly, or what type of philosophy are we discussing?
Well, I mean, what type of philosophy? I mean, this is I guess we can call this existential philosophy, right?
Okay.
Or continental. This is sort of what's quote unquote called continental philosophy, right? When we talk about meaning and purpose and existence and things like this. And the thought here is that, I mean, don't you agree that all of these things, right, we sort of get all worked up about, right? I mean, a relationship breaks and what do? We're crying, we're devastated. And, oh my God, it's like the worst thing in the world that happened to me. And right? But aren't those just stories that we tell ourselves that those things are really, really important, right? Ultimately, does it really matter, right? I mean, how do we die? We all die alone, right? We all get old, we all get sick, and it ends. And when it ends, yeah, all that other stuff, I mean, doesn't make one bit of difference, okay? And so, yeah, so life is meaningless in this way, okay? Purposeless. I mean, of course, we aspire for our lives to be meaningful and purposeful, but that's just so that makes life tolerable for ourselves, right? In order for us to make life tolerable and to find some happiness or fulfillment in our lives, these are stories that we have to tell ourselves, right? And so that's where the absurdity lies, right? If we are honest with ourselves, if we are truly honest with ourselves, we will admit that the things that we do in our lives ultimately doesn't have any purpose or meaning, right? None of it has any kind of lasting significance, but we pretend that they do, right? We keep telling ourselves, so we keep living this life of pretense, right?
What's about we are self-aware, so our life, it's about making ourselves happy. or the people that matters to us happy. That's the purpose.
But how do we do, okay, so maybe that's the purpose. I mean, okay, so just leaving that aside for a second, how do we make ourselves happy? What are the kinds of things that make us happy? Right?
Everyone is different. I don't know, like everyone has a different hierarchy of needs and different priorities in their life.
Okay, so people, you're right. Different things make different people happy, make different people happy. But I mean, what are the sort of things that make you and make me happy? Well, I mean, let's say being a good father or being a good husband, right? I guess makes me happy, right? So if I get any kind of affirmation from my wife or any affirmation from my children, right? Suggestion that you're a good father or you're a good husband, that makes me extremely happy or satisfied.
Like you're saying playing basketball.
Yeah, it's like playing basketball, but that's because I tell myself being a husband is really, really important. Being a good husband, being a good father is really, really important, right? That means something, right? And I tell myself that goes to who I am as a human being or something like that. And so there's a fulfillment there, there's a satisfaction there, there's a happiness there, but that's because there's a certain story that I'm telling myself, right?
And that's why you have the basketball coach at your house once a week.
That's why I have a basketball coach once a week, because for my son, really, I'm not exaggerating this. You will inflate him or deflate him depending on what you say about his basketball skills. I mean, that's just like it's at this point in his like 14-year-old, that's just about everything in his life, right? So, but as adults, right, who've sort of been through life, right, whether you can put a basketball in a hoop or not, I mean, maybe we think.
You don't actually say these things to your son, do you?
No, I don't say that to him. No, I tell him.
Okay.
Oh, you need to
He's on the other side of the
I
door
was like, that
listening.
poor kid.
Right. And so, I mean, maybe we as adults, right, looking back on our lives and all the things that we've been through, we see a kid who's like living and dying with how people view him as a basketball player. We think, oh, that's kind of maybe kind of something we can kind of smile at, right? But I mean, aren't there things that are sort of analogous in our own lives? We tell ourselves, oh, these are like the most important things in the world. But maybe for other people looking on, they think, is that really that important, right? And so the things that take importance in our life are things that we just tell ourselves. It's like a story that we tell ourselves, right? And by telling us these stories, you know, we find disappointment and we get hurt and we get angry and we get happy and we get fulfilled, right? And so life has a certain, life takes on a certain interest, right? So life is interesting for us, right? Because we've got all these things going on and we tell ourselves, right? We put all of these significance on these things that are going on in our lives. I guess if we just tell ourselves, none of this, versus as Crystal was saying, all that we have this sort of nihilistic, right? None of it's important, right? I mean, that would make life kind of very boring and sad, right? Nothing matters. We don't care about anything, right? Because we've got this sort of nihilistic view of things, right? Where nothing is of any kind of significance and nothing really matters and nothing, right? So in order to make life meaningful for us and purposeful for us, we pretend, right? We play this pretense, right? We have this pretense. We have this ongoing pretense that goes on, right? We pretend that all of these things are meaningful and meaningless. And so there's this discrepancy, right? On the one hand, if we're very, very sort of sober in our thinking, right, and philosophical, we realize our lives really don't have any kind of real significance. But on the other hand, in order to make our lives, you know, find some fulfillment and some interest in our lives, we tell ourselves there's a lot of purpose and a lot of meaning to the stuff that we do, right? So on the one hand, nothing we do matters. On the other hand, we tell ourselves many, many things matter, right? And many things have purpose and meaning, right? So there is this discrepancy between what we know to be true and what we pretend to be true, right? And maybe that's okay when you're a kid, right? But as you grow up, right, there should not be, well, hold on. let me take away that part, right? Actually, Nagel doesn't agree with this. Okay, so Nagel's thought is the absurdity is this difference or discrepancy between what we know to be true, nothing really matters, and what we pretend to be true, right? Many things matter, and they matter a lot, right? And so we find ourselves in this absurd situation where we got to pretend something is true when we know it's not true. Okay? We could try to find meaning and purpose by aligning ourselves with something bigger than ourselves, society, the state. Okay, so maybe our individual things, our individual lives, right? As individuals, maybe the things that we do don't matter, but then we tell ourselves, okay, even if that's true, right? We're a part of something bigger than ourselves, right? So, I mean, this is something that was actually going on in my head, right? So, okay, so Trump and Biden, the election is coming up, and some people were saying that if Trump stays on, perhaps, okay, I don't want to get into a political argument with people here, perhaps that's going to be good for the economy, perhaps, okay? We don't have to have an argument about that, but that's something that people say, that it's good for the economy, and perhaps that's good for the markets, right? And for me personally, I'm planning on, investing some of my money into the market. And so perhaps Trump staying on would be good for my personal finances, right? Insofar as I'm looking to put some money into the market. But on the other hand, right? I mean, there's all kinds of problems with Donald Trump remaining president, right? All kinds of trouble. And so even if I might benefit me personally by Trump financially, just in the financial sense, right? And then there are certain businesses my wife is doing right now. And so perhaps Trump staying on would be good strictly in the financial aspect for our family. But on the other hand, I mean, he is, I don't want to get into a debate with people, but I think in my opinion, right, there's these deep ethical problems with the current president. And so the thought here is, okay, even though I might benefit personally, financially, by Trump staying on, okay, this guy's got to go, right? Because life can't just be about me and just my family and our finances, right? I mean, there are all these other things that we got to take into consideration. And so all things considered, Trump's got to go. At least that's my perspective. Okay? I'm not saying that people have to agree with me on this. At least that was my perspective on things. And so we're part of something bigger and something greater. We're part of, we play a certain role in society as a whole, right? And insofar as we play a role in society as a whole, right, maybe our lives have meaning and have purpose because our society, right, as a whole has a purpose, right? And so insofar as society as a whole has a purpose, and we are a small part of it, maybe then that sort of confers purpose and meaning onto ourselves, right? So politically, right, there's a purpose. Perhaps in terms of the advancement of science, right? So maybe you're a scientist, right? And so you're part of, I don't know, what is it? Very recently, there's all this news about a vaccine, effective vaccines for the coronavirus, right? So I think there's like 3 different vaccines that have been, that people have found to be very, very effective against protecting against the coronavirus, right? And so if you are a scientist working on, for instance, a vaccine to protect people against a disease that has, spread all throughout the world, then maybe you're doing something important and you're doing something meaningful and purposeful, right? You're part of something bigger, right? And insofar as you're part of something bigger, maybe what you do matters and what you do has purpose, right? Or maybe you're part of some religion, right? And as I showed on the Google search here with Westminster Catechism, right? So if you are a Catholic or a Christian, right? Maybe you're part of something, maybe your own personal stuff that you do individually doesn't matter, but insofar as you're part of this great movement, this religious movement, right? And maybe you play a small role in what did the Catechism say? The purpose of man is to glorify God, right? Maybe that's what the purpose is, right? We're part of something bigger, right? Something bigger than ourselves. And the thing bigger than ourselves, we align ourselves with, it has purpose, and therefore our lives, the things that we do, insofar as we're part of that, right? Maybe that's the way in which what we do has purpose. Okay. Nagel wants to suggest these things: society, the state, the progress of history, the advancement of science or religion, or doing whatever for the glory of God. Even those things, things at the grand scale don't have any purpose either, right? I mean, a million years from now, the thought here is that there isn't going to be any society, there won't be any state, right? There won't be any thought of progress of history, right? All of it will be gone. There isn't any advancement in science, right? All the advancements in science now, right? All of them is going to be forgotten about, right? All of the religions and all of the religious ideas and all of the religious texts and all the religious practices, all of it will be gone, right? And so we as individuals, what we do individually doesn't matter. And the thought here is that what we do collectively, right? Even though we like to tell ourselves that these things ultimately matter, perhaps things that we do collectively doesn't matter either, okay? Nothing we do as human beings, individually or collectively, matters. Yet, I mean, you see people out in the streets, right? Fighting and marching and protesting as if these are the most important things in the world, okay? I mean, you see, yeah, right? I mean, people extremely emotionally invested in their politics, right? In science, in their religion, or whatever it is, right? But the thought here is that those are two. Those also.
In all actuality,
yeah,
people aren't actually emotionally invested in those things, especially. What they're invested in is their quality of life.
Yeah.
Each of those individual things equate to a small ratio of something that is fulfilling to their soul or their quality of life. Their spirituality, their politics. The reason people have political beliefs is because those are the things that dictate what our lives will be like, how much we pay in taxes, what our medical care will be like, what what type of rights will be respected and which ones won't be respected. All of these things are elements of an individual's quality of life.
Yeah.
I would say that if politics didn't dictate, how good or how bad our life is, people wouldn't really give a shit who the hell the next president was.
Yeah. No, agreed. No, but the thought here is, okay, so if I'm let's say a Democrat and I'm like a political activist, and they're fighting for democratic purposes, right? Democratic causes, right? For universal health care and equality for, people of different races and people in the LGBTQ community. And I'm fighting for, I don't know, whatever, climate change, making sure that we're protecting our climate and so on. And this is all supposed to make our lives somehow better, right? And so I I devote my life, right? I'm fighting, right? I'm devoting my money and my time and my energy, and I'm out there like feverishly working. The thought here is I'm doing these things because it matters. It's going to matter in people's lives. You're right about that. That's exactly what people think. It matters in people's lives, right? And of course, if you're a Republican or conservative, right? I mean, you think that the things that you're fighting for, right? It's going to improve people's lives and make people's lives better. I mean, that's why we're arguing with each other. That's why we disagree with each other. Okay, but according to Nagel, those are just stories that we tell ourselves. Okay, so let's say that being a Democrat and fighting for democratic purposes does make our lives better. Okay, but even if it makes our lives better, ultimately, what lasting difference is that going to make? Okay, so let's say that we protect the climate, right? And then we sort of avoid or delay the inevitable, the extinction of our species. So instead of going out of existence in 500 years, we
An
extend
inevitable?
the inevitable, which is the extinction of human
I would like
life.
to have more hope than that for humanity.
I think it is going to be inevitable that we human beings wind up.
Not if we wise up, not if we mature as a species. I don't think it is inevitable. I think there are ways that we can deter our extinction.
I mean, you do
At
know
this
that
point,
more
it's
than
kind of up to us.
you do know that more than 99% of all species on Earth eventually has gone extinct, right? That's just what
Well,
happens.
yeah, but none of them had nearly the higher order functioning that we do. None of them had the ingenuity that we do. We
Okay.
dictate our own survival by our ability to adapt, our ability to create tools, our ability to change our environment. These are all things that equate to our survivability.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, okay. So you disagree that it's just merely delaying the inevitable. You think maybe it's not inevitable. But I mean, how long do you think?
I hope it's not inevitable.
Okay.
Truth is, only humanity can make that decision.
Yeah. I think even if we somehow all wised up and we are all cooperating with each other, I think that we can do a lot to mitigate some of the negative effects we've had on the environment. But even still, right?
No, you're absolutely right. But perhaps we can maintain survivability on this planet long enough to advance space travel far enough that we can find other planets that have a similar atmosphere and environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we could, and this would be a way of sort of prolonging the sort of the existence of our species.
Don't say inevitable.
Okay.
Or
maybe it's not inevitable.
Another idea is we could advance our own technology far enough that we could create artificial atmosphere or artificial environment that is adaptable enough to meet our needs.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe we can sort of prolong the existence of the human species. Maybe we can substantially prolong our existence, right? Maybe here on this earth, or maybe in some other place. But
what a bleak perspective.
But I think it's. I think I can safely say human beings are not going to be around 1 million years from now, right?
You can safely say that.
Yeah, I think we can safely say that. Okay. And so so let me put a conclusion to this. Okay, so for what's his name, Nagel. Okay, life is absurd in the sense that we know ultimately what we do is not going to have any lasting significance, but we live our lives as if the things that are happening in our life are like the most important thing in the world, right? That's how we live our lives. And so there is discrepancy between what we know to be true and what we pretend or what we tell ourselves is true. So what should we do about this, right? So that's where the absurdity lies. What should we do about this? According to Nagel, here's what he prescribed. What makes our lives absurd is that we have the ability to recognize that our lives and all the pursuits are pointless, yet still pursue them as if they're not pointless, right? We're the only creatures able to do this. This makes us unique. He thinks we should sit back and we should marvel at this fact about ourselves, that we are able to look on our own lives and recognize the absurdity, right? And he does not prescribe, right, this sort of sad, nihilistic approach to life where we just say nothing matters, right? He thinks that would make life extremely intolerable, right? He thinks that we should just continue on the way we're living, right? Keep telling ourselves the things in our lives, our relationships, and our careers, and so on and so forth, are really, really, our politics, our religion. Keep telling ourselves these things are really, really important, even though deep inside we know not that important, because that's the way to keep life interesting. And in doing this, we should sit back and admire this fact about ourselves, that we can do this, right? We can recognize this thing about ourselves, right? We can sit back and recognize the absurdity of our own lives, right? He thinks that's something unique to human beings. And so his prescription is, again, to just sit back and admire this fact about ourselves, okay? So, okay, very, very, very good discussion. Okay, so my thanks to Leah and to Priscilla, and I think, was it Victoria, did you make a comment? Somebody else made a comment, all right? So thank you for the very lively discussion, right?
We would have so much fun in class. It's too bad.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, you know, the time is changed, so I cannot be here all the time. Like, I'm off right now for the week, so I can be here this week, but otherwise I can't. But yeah, we'll have so much fun.
Yeah, it's too bad you can't be here more often. I think it really
I know.
completely changes the dynamic of our discussion here.
No, it's a bummer. I would like to discuss stuff with you guys. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, it's really too bad that we can't just be in class, like going at it. I think that would be that would have been the best. Well, anyways, happy Thanksgiving to all. Hope everyone has a good break. And if you have any questions or comments about anything regarding the exam or the paper, please let me know. Leah, did you need to talk to me?
no, I found it in the email.
Oh, you found it.
What kind of form do you want, like an MLA, APA, or
Okay,
just
that's
write a
not that.
paper?
Yeah, I'm not really particular about that kind of stuff. Just
Okay.
use any reasonable format, right? Double spaced,
Hello,
12 font. That should be good enough.
Professor.
So wait,
Yeah.
the paper, I'm sorry.
Well,
Go ahead, Sydney.
I just real quick, this is Amanda. I was wondering if I can talk to you right now after class, just for.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the rest of the class, you can go ahead and sign off. And
Real
have a
quickly, I had a
good.
question.
Oh, you had a question too.
I did. Where is this paper? Where can we find the information for it?
Okay, check your email. I just sent an email to you.
Okay.
I
thank you.
didn't
With
receive
all of the information about how to write the final draft.
You're
Okay?
gonna send an
Alright.
email?
I did send an email.
I never received an email from you. I only got my test scores back, but I never received anything about the essay.
Okay, so is this Victoria?
Yeah.
Okay. If I haven't, then I will send that to you in the next hour.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And
Check
Amanda,
all of them because I don't know if I've gotten one either, and I can't.
no,
really-
you got it for sure. Check your email.
All right.
100%
Cool.
you got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So everyone can sign off except for Amanda.
Professor, are we still taking the third test?
Yes,
Do you know when it's going to be?
on the 11th.
Okay, thank you.
The final, is it gonna be kind of like the previous test, or is it gonna
Yeah.
be, are you gonna use even the same questions or some of them, or is it gonna be completely different?
It's not going to be the same questions, but it's going to be questions taken from all of the stuff that we've talked about this semester.
Okay, so the completely different questions, not the same as.
Yeah, different questions. Or it could be similar questions. I mean, there's only so many different questions I can
I know,
ask.
okay.
Okay, let me just say it's a challenge to make up exams
Yeah.
in these times. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's why my other philosophy classes, there's no exams, just papers.
oh, really? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I tried that too. That didn't work out so well for me. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
no,
have
if
to
you
go
have a
back
12-page paper on the philosophy, yeah, I'm
Oh, yeah.
studying right now. So, okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a
Bye-bye.
happy evening.
Bye-bye. Have a good happy Thanksgiving.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to email you some questions about the essay, would we
Yeah.
use the Riley email?
No. Oh, yeah. No. That's just for the grading. Please send it to my dquan3420.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
Hi.
Amanda? Oh, hi.
Hi. So it's about the essay. I got my grade back and I wasn't too happy with it.
Okay.
So my question for you was, how can I make it better?
Okay, is this was Amanda?
Mhm.
Okay, hold on, let me look at what I said. Amanda. Napolitano? Okay,
Yeah.
so let me see. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see what we have. That states that the watch human is complicated. You think that because the watch human has multiple parts with this. There are many designed elements in the universe that might exceed the. There are many designed elements in the universe that might exceed. Oh, I see. Okay. I remember your paper by putting myself. Okay, so you're saying that because there are other things in the universe that are more complex, that perhaps maybe the brain is not complex? Is that what you were trying to say?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I think that when it comes to complexity, of course, there are things that are more or less complex, but the question of whether something is or is not complex, okay? Whether something is or is not complex is, let me see, what's the way to put it? Whether something is or is not complex just depends on whether it's intrinsic to the object. It doesn't matter about other objects, whether they're objects that are more complex or less complex. You can just look at a single object and determine whether it's complex or not, right? So depending on the definition of complexity, right? So complexity, as I was saying during the our discussion, right? So an object is complex if and only if. Did I actually give you a definition of complexity? Okay, so even if an object. So let me actually write out the definition for you. Here's a definition of complexity. You probably find a better definition this on Google, but here's it. An object O is complex if and only if O is composed of parts of interconnected parts, and the parts are interconnected or arranged in such a way that O can perform a specific task. Okay, so like take my glasses for instance. Okay, obviously there are objects that are more complex than my glasses, but that's not relevant. Okay, forget about other things, whether they're more complex or less complex than my. Let's look at the glasses itself, right? It's complex according to this definition, right? So an object is complex if and only if O is composed of interconnected parts. So the watch has the, the whatever, the lens and the frame and all the different parts, right? And they're interconnected. They're arranged in such a way that the glasses has a specific purpose, right? It's to enhance my vision or something like that, right? So even though it's not very complex, it's still, according to this definition, it's still complex, right? So
Can you maybe give me a little more on how I could maybe change my argument or make it in a way to where it makes sense?
okay, so what I will say is, I think that you should agree that the human eye, for instance, is complex. Okay, so let me see here. Here's what the way I would. Here's what I would say. Okay, so here's the way to understand Paley's argument. Okay. A watch is complex, right? In this sense, right? In the sense that it's got parts and the parts are interconnected and arranged in a certain way that allows the watch to perform a particular task, right? Keeping track of the passage of time. Okay, so we conclude it must have been designed, right? So a watch has parts and the parts are interconnected or arranged in a particular way. And having the watch's parts being interconnected and arranged in a particular way that allows the watch to perform a particular task, have a particular function, right? So then the thought is, how did the watch's parts come to be connected in the way that they are, right? How did the watch's parts come to be arranged in the particular way that they are, right? Somebody must have designed it, right? I mean, it can't just be by accident that all, I mean, just look at this, what do you call it? This glasses, right? You look at the parts and the parts are arranged in a particular way that allows me to use it for a particular purpose. Now, it can't be coincidence that the parts are arranged the way that they are, right? Someone must have arranged the parts, right? There's got to be some kind of a design behind it, right? You can say that about my glasses and you can say that about a watch, right? So watch is complex, so we conclude it must have been designed. It can't, the arrangement of the parts cannot have been, cannot have
Just appear.
resulted from could not have been brought about by accident. Right? It can't just be accidental or incidental that these parts came to be arranged that they are. Right? So we say it's designed. Okay. Thus, we say it must have had a designer. Okay. If it's designed, someone or someone's, some person or some persons must have designed it. Right? Similarly, the human eye is complex, right? The human eye has parts and the parts are arranged, right? So we should also say that it too is designed, right? If we say that the parts of the watch being complex or arranged in the way it is the result of design, then I think what we're saying here is that everything complex in this sense must have been designed. And so if you say that the human eye is complex, then we have to say that it too is designed, right? Now, you can try to, so the assumption here is everything complex is designed, okay? So that's the central idea here is, that's the central idea here, right? Everything complex is designed. And I would advise you to challenge it. You should challenge this idea. You should challenge this assumption. If you accept this assumption, then you're going to have to say that the human eye is designed. And then I think it's a very small step from there to say that it has a designer. And then the question is, who could be the designer of the human eye? Well, who other than God, right? And then you're on your way to admitting God exists, right? So if you want to challenge that, probably the best way to challenge it is this assumption right here, okay, that everything complex is designed. You might say, well, definitely the watch complex, therefore designed, but there's an important disanalogy between the watch and the human eye, right? There's an important difference between the human eye and a watch. The watch, if it's complex, yeah, you're right. We have to say it's designed, but maybe there's a difference here with the eye. Even though it's complex, maybe there's a way to stop from having to say that it's designed, right? So you should challenge this assumption, is what I would say. Okay, and one way to challenge this assumption is using the ideas from Darwin, right? So Darwinian ideas, right? So the idea is Darwinian processes or natural processes, evolutionary processes like reproduction and genetic variation and natural selection, right? So the ideas sort of postulated or posited by evolutionary theory, right? It's supposed to give you complexity without design. Okay, that's what you're trying to find. Some way to get complexity without design. Okay, so your original objection, right, which was, somehow the human eye is not complex. Okay, I think that's a non-starter. Okay,
Okay.
it obviously is complex. I mean, I think that's sort of beyond challenge, right? That's not the sort of thing that you should be challenged. You should concede, indeed, it is complex, okay? But then the question is, how do you get that? Where did the complexity come from, okay? Did the complexity have to come from some sort of intelligent mind designing it? Or can there be complexity like you find in the human eye through natural processes, right? Where there isn't any design, there isn't any sort of intelligent engineering. It's natural engineering, right?
Yeah, like a rock.
No, okay, a rock is not complex.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I mean, think about this. What's the purpose of a rock?
Nothing. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, well, we find I mean, when we're walking in nature, right, we stumble upon rocks, but there's no purpose of a rock, right? Rocks just exist. There's no purpose of a rock, right? Whereas the human eye and the human brain, there is a purpose, right? And so insofar as there's a purpose and there's parts that make it up, it's complex. So since rocks are not complex, we don't have to worry about rocks, okay? Worry about things. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. So I need to find, so basically I need to say there's a difference between making a watch and making a human eye. And, and bring it to Darwin and use explanation.
Yeah. So when it comes to the watch, there isn't any natural process that can bring about the kind of complexity we see in a watch, right? I mean, the thing about a watch is, how is a watch constructed? Sort of in a single sort of an event, right? So you come and you bring it all. It's not like you get like less advanced watches and they reproduce itself, and then you get more advanced watches and they get different parts. A watch reproduces like 3 other watches, and there's nothing like that goes on with a watch, right? So if you're going to get a watch, it has to all be done in a single event, you see? But when it comes to, I don't know, something like various things we find on our bodies, right? It doesn't have to all sort of come about in a single event, right? So your parents have no eyes, and then boom, all of a sudden you've got eyes, right? It doesn't have to be in a single event, right? So your parents have eyes, and their parents and ancestors, and we go way, way back in the evolutionary history, and you see there is just sort of this original events that brought about the sort of the prototype eye, and and through like millions of years of reproduction and genetic variation and natural selection, and there's all these natural selecting processes, all of these processes after millions of years of this going on, repeating over and over and over again, right? Somehow you get something like the modern human eye or something like that, right? Now, obviously, there isn't any engineering, of course, there's natural engineering, but there isn't any kind of designing here. There's no like intelligent mind behind the evolutionary process, yet just natural evolutionary processes bring about, perhaps can bring about something as complex as the human eye. Right? So in order for you to write a successful paper, I mean, you're going to have to sort of do some reading on the evolution of the human eye, right? Maybe you can you can type that in, right? And do a little bit of reading. And so you can suggest there's a way to adequately account for the complexity of, for instance, the human eye without saying any kind of design, right? Just through natural evolutionary processes. But what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to provide some details on how something like that could come about by natural processes. And that's gonna require you to get some understanding of how the evolutionary process works, right? And if you can do that, right? So this is not a science paper, right? I mean, you don't have to give a lot of details, but you're gonna have to give some details so that I can get an understanding of what that process sort of has to look like, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I could like maybe summarize real quick. So an argument against it would be, yes, everything complex is designed, but there's a difference between the complexity of a watch.
Oh, hold on, back up. You
Okay.
deny that everything, okay? So when it comes to artifacts, like artificial things, like, like a watch is artificial. So something like my glasses is artificial, right?
Mhm.
It's not something that occurs in nature, right? You don't go to the woods and find like glasses like growing on trees, right? So these are not naturally occurring objects. So when it comes to artifacts like this, when we see complexity, we have to say design. But you think there's a difference between artifacts and naturally occurring objects. So there's artificial objects and natural objects, right? And so the human eye is a natural object. And when it comes to natural objects, because there's evolutionary processes, right? We don't have to say that it's designed. So take this claim right here. You're gonna say, if you admit this, then obviously you can't object to this and agree to this, right? You can't say everything complex is designed
Okay.
and admit to this and then say, I reject this, right?
Okay.
You're gonna have to ultimately reject this. You say, look, when it comes to the watch, because it's artificial, if it's complex, it's designed. But the human eye is not an artifact, it's natural, right? It's a naturally occurring object. And when it comes to its complexity, we don't necessarily have to say design, right? There are natural processes that can account for the complexity of the human eye, okay? Okay, so go ahead and recap.
Okay. So a watch is,
Time out, sorry, back up. What premise are you gonna be rejecting?
this is the first premise.
It's actually, well, I don't know if it's the first premise, but this premise right here, this thing right here, everything complex, so you should state, this is what I'm going to be objecting to. This is
Okay.
what I'm going to argue is false, right? I don't agree that everything complex is designed, right?
Okay.
Many things that are complex are designed, right? Many artificial things. When it comes to artificial things, yes, all of those things that are complex are designed, but I don't agree that natural things, naturally occurring things, right? Just because they're complex, that they have to be designed. When it comes to naturally occurring objects, even though complex, they're not necessarily designed. Okay, so that's what you have to state. Okay, so before you argue for this, you have to state, here's what I'm gonna be arguing for, okay? Here's what I object to, here's what I will be arguing, and then you gotta argue for it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay, let me write that down for you.
yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you. Without positing design?
You know, without saying that it was designed, right? Positing means, you know, say that there is design just for the sake of, let's make it simple. More simple language, yeah?
Thank you.
Argue that we can account for the complexity without saying that it was designed, okay? Okay. Provide, okay? You will try to account for the complexity of okay, you're gonna have to provide a lot of details on how Darwin's theory goes. Okay, so this is what you need to do. Okay, clear?
A lot. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right, bye. So I'm gonna email this to you right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
All right.